Hello, everyone. I am Julien Le Noohra, your host and creator of this event, and I'm truly honored to be speaking today with Patricia Avian Lehman. She's a symbologist, a speaker, a researcher, and an explorer. Welcome, Patricia. It's a great joy to have you here.
It's an honor to be here, Julian. Thanks.
So good to see you again, and thank you so much for being part of this event.
My pleasure, and it's great to see you again as well.
Thank you. So let me introduce you to our audience in case they're not familiar with your work already. As a longtime student in metaphysical, spiritual, and indigenous traditions, Patricia's eclectic spiritual background serves as a strong foundation to support her work. Her lifelong passion to know why and how we exist led her to the in-depth study of the esoteric sciences, as well as the physical sciences, comparative religions, ancient literature, mythology, art history, and symbolism. All of this was an incredible preparation for the level of research that she is currently undertaking in Egypt. The Neteru, mythology and symbolism of ancient Egypt, all combine to give us a brilliant vision and understanding of the genesis of mankind and how we eternally cycle through dimension and stages of consciousness. They have given us an alchemical map for how we can work with these natural and archetypal energies and patterns in order to traverse these dimensional portals in any now moment. She became a student of work of the Egyptian indigenous wisdom keeper Abdel Hakim Avian on her first trip to Egypt in 2005. Patricia has lived in Egypt for 14 plus years and devotes much of her time to the research of ancient symbolism and mythologies worldwide. She has traveled to many ancient sites globally, researching clues that support the concept of a very advanced civilization, both technologically and spiritually, that once spanned the globe thousands of years ago and left a legacy of knowledge and wisdom for us to decipher. So your topic for today is how the ancients of Khemit, Egypt, mastered the space in between.
Well, it's sort of what I would define as, when you say tap into the unseen realms, these unseen realms are these, the higher dimensions that exist outside of our physical world, or what most of the ancients worldwide called the illusion. In India, they called it Maya, and in Egypt, Maya, we still say Maya today. It's the word for water. It's a watery illusion of life, in action. So, these unseen realms, that we're all striving to get to, are these spaces in between what we think is real. So, I'll go ahead and stop me, Julian, if you have any questions, or you have anything to address within this. I can't see you, so you'll just have to jump in.
Okay.
But I wanted to start out by introducing their concept of Heca. Heca was basically, we use the word religion today. They would not have used that word. They, for Egypt, it was spirituality, and their gods were the netters, they didn't perceive the gods the way we use that word today. The netters were forces of nature. Excuse me. And so they understood everything in their realm as these forces of nature, these currents. And you see this wonderful image of Heca on the right. And this is the netter Heca, and they use symbolism and mythology to describe what they knew to be true. So Heca, if you look at him, he's holding serpents, and serpents, of course, is energy in motion. They're the way they move. And so he's taking these two dual forces of nature, polarities, and he's crossing them. And in Egypt, whenever you see a cross, and I think this is worldwide, you're actually looking at a portal. You know, that X creates a portal, and that portal is that 0 point, the heart. It's that place that everything emerges from and goes back to. And that creates this vortex into the other dimensions. So, you know, this was their great understanding. And Heca was their underlying force behind spirituality. If you knew how to feel, navigate, and harness these forces of nature, you were employing what they called the Ka. You see the name for Heca right there, and the hands up in the air, that's Ka. That's the animating life force in a physical perception of reality. And next to that Ka is this image of H, Ka, right? That's his name. And it means to employ the life force, the animating life force, to create what we would call today magic. So these two wonderful images, I absolutely love these. On the left is Horus, right? And it's Horus the younger, because it's the innocence of youth. If you look at him, he's holding serpents and lions and scorpions, right? And he's holding them, and what he's actually doing is transmuting his own polarity. These are the forces that we would say, oh, they're scary beasts, right? Scorpions and all of these beasts. He's standing on crocodiles. Well, in ancient Egypt, crocodiles actually represented digestion. And in this case, it's digestion of fear, which can produce anger. And when we digest our fear and anger, we transmute our polarity, and we're able to rise again to those higher levels and higher dimensions and portals that we're seeking, that place of bliss that is outside the physical realm. And on the right is an image.
Just a question about Horus. So this sounds very much like the hero's journey to me, and overcoming, you know, your dark side and fears.
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, Horus is the Greek name for the ancient Egyptian name for Horus, which was Heru. Heru is how we would write it. And Heru, of course, is where we get our word hero. And in the mythology of one of the major mythologies in ancient Egypt, it's a story about Isis and Set and Osiris and Nebhet, and then Horus being born as an ascended Osiris. So Osiris takes the first step on the journey into the night, the dark realms that you're talking about. And as he takes this, and it's a sine wave path, it's a serpent path, right? The serpent sine wave of ups and downs, the roller coaster that we must live on of polarity, right? The negative and positive of polarity that exists in a physical realm. But it's Horus who actually ascends at the resurrection of Osiris. So there's two sides of this story. There's a night cycle and then a day cycle where our hero emerges and then leads us into that higher levels of consciousness. And in ancient Egypt, they actually understood, and in places all over the world, the indigenous speak of these cycles of consciousness, and that at one time, what we call today the golden age, that all human beings and animals and birds and everything had this higher level of consciousness. We were connected. It's unified consciousness. We felt deeply connected to everything that exists. You would call it even a right brain focus, where today we are left brain focused, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it's that right brain, the intuitive side, that allows us to feel from the heart this deep connection to all that is. So it's a journey between these two realms, the two sides, hemispheres of the brain, if you will. And then at the end, after we've experienced both, we can actually come together and unify back to the center, back to the heart, the great resurrection. And every end is a new beginning. And this was the story. And you don't have to wait, you know, for all the cycles. If you're familiar with precession, the ages, we don't have to wait. We can actually take that leap in any great yogic breath once we understand the process, the patterns. And that's Heca. It's understanding, feeling the patterns, you know, discerning the patterns and knowing how to harness and navigate them. That allows you to create what we would call today supernatural was totally natural to them.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Well, and on the right is this wonderful image. The image is called, in this case, it's at Kamambo, by the Nile River. When we take the cruises, we actually stop at Kamambo, one of my favorite temples. And this wonderful image is really, it's of Nehed cow. It's basically Ophiuchus, the 13th zodiac sign that sits in the center of our galaxy, between Scorpio and Sagittarius. It's that direct gateway to heaven. He's the serpent bearer. He's actually the same as what we see with Horus. He's basically transmuting the two polarities to take us back to center. So the same understanding is projected in so much imagery and story and myth throughout all the different cycles and time periods in Egypt. But later times, as consciousness devolves, we come up with this concept, and I show these images. You know, I was on a tour last year in March with Julien, and after the tour, one of the guests that was with us wanted to go to a site called Buto that celebrates her favorite netter, which is Wadjet. And we went to this wonderful museum, and the first two images we see on the right, actually, there's a third one too, but I included a better picture. But all of these images were at this museum. And it's wonderful because it takes what we just saw as transmuting the beasts, right? And here, a later day teaching becomes we have to kill the beast, right? But there is no beast, see? And Hakim, who was my mentor here in Egypt, the great knowledge holder and wisdom keeper, he always said that this was the game of the priests, that, they take this great deep knowing, and as we become more associated with being our body, we lose touch with that deep connectedness, and we begin to identify with our bodies as ourselves. And so, we become more apt to, it's sort of like he called the priests that did this the Hanuti, and it's where we get the word in Cahoots, right? Because they're manipulating our our animating life force, Cahoots, Cahoots. But at any rate, they developed the concept of the physical death and the death of the soul, where before we understood the soul is eternal, that there are eternal cycles constantly that spirit is experiencing, and the higher realms, that we don't always just experience reality in only one dimension of being. But the priests changed the story, and suddenly we're killing the beast. And unfortunately, you're killing a part of yourself, because the negative and the positive are not good and bad. Other concepts that come into play, Set becomes Satan. But Set, I asked Hakim once, was Set really evil? And he just looked and smiled, and twinkle in his eye, and he says, it depends on which way you're looking. And this is the key to understanding how we transmute our polarity, is not by labeling it and not by putting it into containers of good and evil and bad, and paradise and hell. These concepts were created in order to instill fear. And the lesson of what we just spoke about is, we need to transmute that fear. There is nothing to be afraid of. And so the key is what's really happening here. If you look at these images, the beast that they're killing is the serpent, the dragon. It's Draco, right? It's that spiraling image in our heavens where our ecliptic pole exists, which is our center. You know, that the Earth is 23.5 degrees off its axis, but if it comes back to center, it's pointing right to it's actually called the Eye Nebula in the middle of one of the spirals of Draco. That's our center. So it's really an interesting dynamic. And another way to look at this is you're silencing the spin, right? Because the Earth's axis is spinning around the circumpolar stars where Draco is. Well, when the spin stops, that's a moment of silence. That's the moment we come back to center and we remember who we are, that, you know, we're connected to everything that is. It's a moment of complete bliss and gnosis, knowing. So yeah, again, you know, simple ideas that we've somehow forgotten. What we're looking at here, this is really awesome because I was doing some research and I stumbled across this wonderful paragraph in the foreword or beginning of this book, Chinese Medical Qigong. And it describes the ancient Egyptians at their, you know, highest state of consciousness. And it says, I've heard that in remote antiquity, they were perfected people, Zen Ren, who mastered heaven and earth and controlled yin and yang. They breathed the refined qi, preserved their spirit independently, and their muscles and flesh were in integrated unity. Thus, they were able to achieve the longevity of heaven and earth, for which there is no end. All of this was because they lived in accord with the Tao. And it's just a beautiful way of explaining exactly what we were just talking about. And the above image, you see these Egyptians and they're holding the net. And what they're actually doing, they're masters of the net, the matrix of the mind. Because what it's telling us is to get back to our heart, again, back to our center. And the ancient Egyptians, because they were deeply connected to the currents, were able to master them. It's just another way of expressing it. And so I think I showed you this when we were at EDFU, Julian. Do you remember?
Yes, yes.
One of my favorite things, you know, when I first got to Egypt, I saw these nets everywhere. And my mind just went immediately to this is some sort of matrix. And then I saw this one at EDFU. And if you look, there's hostages with their hands tied behind their backs, right? And this is the image for hostage in Egypt. So in a way, it's like I said, we're held hostage by a belief that we are our bodies, that we exist in a physical realm, and that, you know, we are separate from everything else. And you can see birds and other animals within this net. And this net is actually considered to be like a flexible matrix of creation, which we would describe today as the matrix of space-time, right? It's these patterns that I've been talking about. This is the net. And you always see Thoth associated with this. Thoth is consciousness. As the ibis bird, he is consciousness from above. And as the baboon, he is consciousness from within, you know, that deep knowing consciousness. And he basically is the master of the net. And it's what we are all seeking to achieve, to again reach those higher levels of consciousness, you know, to return to the bliss, if you will. I just find it interesting. This was written by Bika Reed in Rebel in the Soul, and he says the ancient Egyptians saw his physical body as the net that enmeshes his soul. He refers to his body as the soul's body, in which the mental being is a destructive foreigner. For Egypt, the body is like a cosmos, a network of functions, and we get lost in the chaos of functions, and we forget to return to our hearts. So I love that he says, you know, the mental being, we you know, this focus on our left brain has us, you know, so analytical and so focused on our mind and analyzing everything. And I'm sure, you know, everybody's heard, you know, that, you know, go with your gut, follow your heart. The heart always takes you down the path of miracles. You know, it's just amazing if you just listen to your inner voice and rely and trust in it. When we stop listening to that voice and start analyzing every little detail, we always analyze ourselves, right? You know, everything falls apart, at least in my world. And I love this because it actually shows you graphically what I'm talking about. You know, the Holy Grail is the heart. It's the heart of the matter. You know, we use these terms today. The mind and the matter is the matrix. This is the matrix, right? And it's the Taurus field. And once we master this and we know how to breathe back to center, that's finding our bliss. That's the key. Today, we tend to hide our hearts. We hide our truths. We hide our feelings because we're afraid. But if we were to tear open our chests, you know, this is the Sekhmet energy, tear open our chests and reveal ourselves. You know, that if we all did this, we could really, you know, initiate a whole new way of being on Earth. You know, to not be controlled by agendas that cause fear, whether it's, you know, religion against religion or race against race. You know, all of these things are intended to divide and conquer. And the key is, you know, to remember that we are all part of that same center, that, you know, we all breathe back into the same center. You are me, you're my mirror. Everything in this environment is my mirror. It's if we think somebody's out to get us, that's coming from within. You know, just changing our perception changes our world. You know, that's the secret we all forgot.
You said that so beautifully.
Oh, thanks.
It's so also this image of the veil of Isis. I think it's very beautiful, and everything you said is so true. And but I think this veil starts to lift slowly or get more permeable, more transparent, because the energies with the age of Aquarius are shifting, and so there's more of this new energy coming. And it's also the time when Horus came the last time. It's when the time were the darkest. It's the same as we have experienced now. We have very dark times, and that's when, like, Horus comes back, or in the Indian mythologies they call it the great Kumaras. They come back, and they only come when there is great darkness on Earth.
You're absolutely right.
I found it so beautiful the way you explained it, and also that Toph or Tehuti, this is basically the goal that everybody should be striving for, is this wisdom that the matrix is not real. Basically, this is the illusion we have to break through to get to find again the divine inside of each of us, basically.
That's absolutely correct. 100%. And it's you know, it should be second nature to us. There's no shoulds. I hate the words these should, but to bring all of this knowledge forward again and to make it, you know, okay in a world where we're all isolating and afraid. You know, this is key. You know, and it's a time for us to all join hands and come back together again, and do, you know, whatever it takes. And it all starts with us. You know, it all starts with me. And again, you know, here is Jehuti. I love that you bring in the ancient names. It's great. Jehuti, Thoth, and this wonderful image is at Abydos. And you can see he's holding these two wands, and one is the papyrus and one is the lotus. They represent Upper and Lower Egypt. And on top of them, you see these Uraeuses, basically cobras, wearing the crown of Upper Egypt, the white crown of Upper Egypt. Here it's a little golden, but it's normally white, and the red crown of Lower Egypt. And if you notice where his hand is, he's making that portal. He's crossing the two, which I find fascinating. And again, you know, Upper and Lower Egypt represent the two hemispheres of the brain. So when they talk about the kings, you know, they go through these ceremonies and rituals. They run the labyrinth, Hebset rituals, and all to find that center. It's all about finding a balance between the two hemispheres of the brain. So in other words, it's not about only heart-based thinking or mind-based thinking, but it's about harnessing the energy of both. You know, that we need our minds. We're born in a physical world to utilize those minds, but with the utilization of the heart as well. You know, there's a beautiful balance, and when we balance them, that's how we find our center. And I love this image. It's wonderful. It's in Schwaller de Lubeck's book, Temple of Man. And it's from Karnak. And you see, this is Thoth or Jehuti as the master of the net. He's the master of the matrix. And he's holding the net behind him with his arms stretched out. And you have Khnum on the to the left there, and he is the master of the mysteries of water. And love, see that spiral that's coming down from his hand? And then Sachet is the great architect. She is responsible. She is form, you know, liquid light becoming form, you know, becoming a physical form in a physical reality. And it becomes form in sacred geometric patterns. And I know this is a topic Julien loves to talk about, but it's such a beautiful thing because she's there at the beginning where all of this liquid light becomes this matrix, which is meant and intended to be a beautiful experience. And it can be, that's the idea. This is why we're seeking the higher realms, right? Finding the space in between. You know, it's all about learning how to harness the net. And we too can become masters of the net. And that's the message. And here we go. That was the message they were giving us. And I talked to Dr. Robert Gilbert, and I saw a video he had done on a training from the Vesica Institute, and he talked about these things, and I just wanted to make sure it was okay I used it in my lectures because I think it's such a powerful message. But he says the initiates into the spiritual and vibrational sciences were known as the masters of the net. The net is the flexible matrix of creation. This was often shown in symbolic form as a physical net, as shown here in the hands of the initiates. The masters of the net knew how to work with the invisible vibrational world, which forms a net, a matrix, which determines the appearance and functions of everything in the manifest world. So again, it's just more, you know, it's like everyone's, you know, coming together at this wonderful understanding. And I also want to introduce Dr. Ibrahim Karim and his field of biogeometry. And he just wrote another book. This man, I would call the Imhotep of today, without question. And he understands this everything that I've been talking about in such a beautiful way. I was able to take his course in January of 2020. People had told me I needed to meet he and his family because they spoke my language, and they had moved to Canada, and I finally had the opportunity, and they're just wonderful, wonderful people. We spent a day together at Saqqara, and it was amazing, you know, just watching them do their work. But what's amazing and what's important, I introduce them because they really have tools to carry us into the future. And in this book, you know, he has 3 books out that are absolutely fabulous. I highly recommend everyone read them all. This latest one, I haven't even finished yet. I'm taking it slowly because he really defines and understands so many things, and he goes back to the ancient times. He is an architect. His father was a famous architect. He's worked with the government here at creating facilities for like autistic children because he understands how the ancients, and this is something to really understand how they understood that there is a subtle energy that emits from every color, every number, every tone, shape, form, geometric shape. It's emitting an energy that can be positive or not feel good to the body. And so he's able to teach us how to utilize different tools to, what the ancients could feel these things. They felt the subtle energies. They knew what felt positive and beneficial, and they knew what maybe I need to avoid. Whereas we don't feel it any longer. Hakeem would have said these are senses we forgot we had. We see, he'd say we still have them, we just forgot. He'd say, wake up. But with Dr. Ibrahim Karim, he is waking us up by giving us tools to actually that can sense the subtle energies, and so we can learn how to use these tools to equip our homes with taking some of the negative technologies, like some would say Wi-Fi. I'm affected by Wi-Fi, but with some of his tools, he's able to take those negative effects and make them positive. And again, it's just understanding subtle energy. But also within his book, he speaks about the ancients and their capabilities. And it's just amazing knowledge to know.
Yeah, here I would like to mention the principle of vibration from the Kybalion, which says nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. And this is true for every object, but even thoughts, or like hieroglyphics, written text, spoken word, everything holds a certain vibration. And if you want to basically break through the veil, you need to raise your vibrations, or to raise your vibration, you need to have positive or loving and compassionate thoughts, words, and energy, so that your frequency can rise up. So, and it also is in the food you eat and the activities you do and everything that, and the Egyptian understood that. So it's beautiful to have this in the modern world through Hakeem.
Absolutely, absolutely. Through great elders worldwide. I mean, through Hakeem, through Dr. Ibrahim Karim, through many elders that I've met in different parts of the world, they hold on to this knowledge. And again, the key, as you said, be careful what you eat. Well, the key is, even self-love. If you love yourself, why would you put poison into your body? It's so simple. It's always getting back to balance and getting back to the heart on all levels, in my opinion. And I talked about the right brain, left brain. So I wanted to show you how, the ancients really did understand this. I have this image. It's of a king's or a pharaoh's head in the Metropolitan Museum in New York City, Metropolitan Museum of Art. And you can see, and I have this, you see this image everywhere, but this was a uraeus. The serpent part was broken off, so I put the other image to the left there, or to the right, sorry. But what you see there is he's facing you. That's why the right brain's on the other side and the left. But anyway, it does this sine wave pattern connecting both hemispheres of the brain. It's showing that this king was able to transmute his polarity. And then when I went to Turkey in 2019, and I went to the Urfa Museum, that's very near Göbekli Tepe, and I saw this wonderful image of this same serpent on the head. And of course, that site is dated to like 10,000 BC or older. And, this isn't a concept that, again, the ancient people want to say Atlantis was an island somewhere. And I say Atlantis is a label that unfortunately confines. I believe, that higher state of consciousness had to have been global, that all of Earth was in this high state of knowing. I do believe that any one of us can get back to that high state again in any great yogic breath, if you will. But I do think that we precess through these ages and stages, and that shows us these patterns of how to bring ourselves back to center. And you can't escape the net. I saw this. I think I also got this from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or it might have been in the Egyptian Museum. But at any rate, you see the Ba is escaping the net. and the wings are outstretched. And that is the key to getting into the higher realms. And you know, there are ways we do this today through plant medicine, astral projection. I started astral projecting when I was very young, and did it a lot for years and years. Now I don't do it quite as often. You know, I thought I was going to be able to discover all the answers. I found a lot. It helps me so much with my work. But we are still in the physical realm, and you know, I haven't totally transmuted my polarity yet, but I'm working on it, to really, really get to those wonderful states of being. I've had moments of bliss. I've had moments of bliss. Go ahead. Sorry, Julie.
I mean, most people, when they sleep and then go into their dream state, they move into the astral realm. So that's where you get to experience that, you know,
You're absolutely right.
Other realities are there. And this should help us to be more curious and inquire a little bit more about what is real and what is not.
And that's what it does teach you. And I find that people that really understand what I'm talking about have either done plant medicine, have had an astral experience, or had a near-death experience. They're all very similar when you get to experience those, you know, those realms that are outside of the physical. And you're right, everyone does leave their bodies astrally, but having that knowing of, you know, when you talk to people, when I've asked groups of people to raise their hands, you know, if they've ever had an experience, usually more than half the room remembers those experiences, but they didn't quite understand what they were. And the same was true for me. It was really, you know, actually scary at first. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Until I immediately, you know, came across people that it could explain it very easily to me, what I was experiencing. And then being able to experiment with it was just phenomenal. But, you know, it's not something I teach or tell people to go out and do, because you know, everybody is drawn to different things, you know, and plant medicine, I think, is an absolutely wonderful way to get in touch with deeper sides to yourself and you know, the spirit world, if you will. But again, it needs to be done in a really authentic and original way. And I'm not fond of all these modern day, you know, ayahuasca parties and things like that, because you really need to be prepared in a really positive way, by someone who knows before you step into some of these worlds, because it can be a very scary and horrific experience. But if you're aware ahead of time, you know how to face those demons. And, you know, again, I've mentioned this, I think, before, but, you know, it's the same as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you know, that they read to the living after someone they know passes. The book is for the living. In Egypt, the Book of the Dead is actually the book of coming forth by day. It's actually words to tell us how to live, to get to the higher realms, if you will. It's really an interesting thing. And, you know, within that Tibetan book, you meet your demons. You know, you go down into the darkness, as you were saying, you know, the hero's journey. And the idea is to not be afraid, but to embrace them as a part of you. You know, if we didn't have the demons, you know, it's part of our journey. You know, I can't imagine a world where everybody just lives perfectly all the time. Although I can, it would be totally heart-based. And, you know, like they say in the ancient times, we didn't need words or written language because we understood each other. But I think the journey is part of the process, you know, that, you know, we have to have those moments of bliss, but we also, you know, if in a physical world, it's all about the journey.
Yes, I think by experience, if you take the plant medicines, it's like just a glimpse. It's like if you're a fish and just jumping out of the water, and then you go back to where you were. And all the scriptures say you should not do it. It can give you a glimpse of the other side and start the journey. But in the end, you have to do the journey yourself. It's the hero's journey you have to go through. And The goal is to do it while you're alive and not wait until death to realize that. So that's also what the Tibetan Book of the Dead is here for, is to motivate us to do that while we're living and to go to this hero's journey. And they always say it won't be easy, but it will be worth it.
Yep, well said. I absolutely agree. So this is a wonderful image of the cat that you're looking at. Sometimes it's a rabbit or it looks like a hare. Is Ra, it's the sun. But what's fascinating is he's cutting the head off the serpent. And these are the patterns that no longer serve us. This is the key to, if we want change, if we want to live in a better world, again, it's us, it's our thoughts, it's our beliefs, core beliefs that are creating our reality. And if we really need, if we want to let loose or escape from something that no longer serves us, we need to cut the head off the pattern that's no longer serving us. This is the key. And it's not killing the serpent, although this is what it looks like. It's really stopping the pattern that no longer serves. And in a way, this is stopping the Ka, the life force, the animating life force, for a moment of silence. And you can see the tree of life on the other side. And what it's really showing us is these are those key moments. That they tell us, this is why they tell us to meditate, is to find our heart, our center, to find the stillness from that matrix of the mind, get back to the center for that moment of bliss and gnosis, and then breathe out again into something better. And this is wonderful. This image that I have on the left is from the Holy of Holies at the temple of the Hatshepsut on the West Bank in Luxor. And I just stared at this image because it's so beautiful. There is a Simatawi at the bottom, and you see the lotus and the papyrus, and it's knotted. And that knot, if you will, is basically bringing the unity of the upper and lower Egypt, the two sides of the brain. And the Tawi it represents the lungs, and you have the trachea and the voice box, and it's all about resonance or dissonance. So when we breathe into, when we breathe back to center, we're bringing in harmonic resonance. And when we breathe out into separation consciousness, it's like we're breathing out into chaos. So it's coming into that center, which is the heart, that brings us back to that place of bliss again. And above it, you're looking at what appears to be like a Stargate, right? The higher realms, if you will. And the key that he's using is the symbol of union, the Sima, right? That's part of the Simatawi. That key is bringing everything together, harmony, balance, right? Harmonic resonance. It's literally allowing ourselves to release all those things that no longer serve us. And again, above the Stargate, you see the winged disc, and it's, the wings are almost coming down again to a moment of silence. And our bliss is in those moments of silence, heart-centeredness. Not that we stay there, but that we get there, as you just said, Julien, to have those moments of gnosis that carry us through the next breath, the next journey. And here is the symbol of the Simatawi in just its beauty, without any icons or anything else. And it is the lotus and the papyrus representing Upper and Lower Egypt. You can see that it's the lungs and the trachea. And it's all about harnessing the forces of, the polarity, right side of the brain, left side of the brain. So yeah, harmonic resonance is a marriage between opposites, raises our levels of conscious awareness. Dissonance creates chaos, polarity. It limits the senses and causes disease. And where do you think the world is today? Yikes. I think we're on the way back up again. What do you think, Julien?
Well, the energetic shift is definitely coming, and we're on the way back up now.
Yeah, I believe so. People are waking up without a doubt.
And just to come back to your last image, is like during your breath work, you can get this moment of gnosis, this moment of stillness between the breathing in and the breathing out. That's when you can get this moment of gnosis. So that's why meditation also helps to raise your vibration and get to this moment of gnosis.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. Yep, this is the great yogic breath. That's what it's all about. That's what they're talking about. You know, it's breathing out and breathing back in again. There's 2 moments of silence, but the one when we breathe back into center, that's the that's what we're seeking. Excuse me. And here I point out that the 2 eyes that we see, the eyes of Horus, you know, the left eye represents the moon, and the right eye represents the sun. And it's again that idea of bringing the sun and the moon together for that unity. You know, eclipses are those moments. You know, at every eclipse, if you've ever watched one, there can be 1 3 minutes. I think I experienced one that was almost 9 minutes of where nothing moved, and then suddenly they break apart again. And in India, the Hindu and the Vedic texts speak to these moments as the most powerful moments for placing your intentions out into the world, because they're moments of unity, of course. And I mentioned the Eye Nebula that is our ecliptic pole, basically. And isn't that a beautiful image of it? And I wonder at the association and how interesting that is our ecliptic pole, this amazing nebula, which is like a star creating energy force in the heavens, right? And that is the place where when we come back to center, that's where the Earth's axis points. And just to give you an idea, I wanted to show you, again, if you're familiar with precession, if the Earth was pointing straight up, we'd be pointing to the eye in the sky, the Cat Sign Nebula. And we are actually pointed about 23.5 degrees off our axis right now. And this is all expressed in a wonderful, wonderful imagery at Abydos. And people are so familiar with this, where it's called the raising of the Jed pillar, the Jed being the spine of Osiris. And here you see Osiris. You know, if you look at the Jed that's on the left, it's basically 23.5 degrees off its axis. And you see Isis, and the temple was built by Seti I, the pharaoh at the time, and the 2 of them together are raising the Jed, which was a ritual that they performed annually. And they also performed, pharaohs and kings would perform these in their Hebset festivals, which I'm not going to go into detail now. We don't have time. But this whole idea is coming back into balance. So I wanted to point this out, that this is all integral to the ancient teachings. And we could talk for hours about this. But again, within on the image of the right, you know, I'm showing where the 2 eyes are. They're in both images, because this is this moment when Osiris is silent, you know, and they, you know, Isis helps to raise the pillar, and then it stands in, you know, in that perfection for a moment. Every end is a new beginning. But this is the resurrection of Osiris and the Earth. He is the Earth. He's us. He's everything related to our journey in a physical reality, a physical realm. And so this is just before the birth of Horus, is this restoration of Osiris back to center. And you can see within the solar disk at the top, between the 2 feathers, that you're actually seeing the red and the white crowns that we saw holding are there together as one, showing that he has been able to balance and bring the 2 hemispheres of the brain together. But what he must do before that moment, I think, is very fascinating, because this is some pen and ink drawings of the resurrection of Osiris. If you look at the image on the left, if you look at the top image, Osiris is on his back, right? He's dead, right? And you see Isis is the kite bird, and she's going to flap her wings to bring him back to life, magically bring him back to life. But the key is, before he can come back to life, before he can resurrect, basically, you have in many images, you have Horus standing with him, and he says to his father, Osiris, turn over and rise. This is key. So if you look, he starts out on his back, he starts to turn, and then he's on his stomach. And these images will show up. We see them at Dendera, we see them at Abydos and other areas, and it's always the same story. Osiris has to turn over on his belly and then rise. And the key it's telling us, now there's many things we could talk about. We could talk about possibly magnetic reversal of the earth, but we're not going to do that today. But we are talking about a change of perspective, a change of perception. This is the key to that change. You know, when we're only understanding and believing one way, then we're stuck in those patterns. If we need to change those patterns and look at everything entirely differently, and then we can rise. And it's sort of what I was just saying with experiencing the positive and the negative, experiencing the right and the left brain, you know, both heart and mind, and then pulling them together to find the balance, that moment of silence, and then the resurrection occurs. And this is just, again, wonderful imagery. I found this wonderful picture of a stone statue in India. It's at Tirthankara sculpture. And I thought immediately when I saw it, well, that looks like the head of Osiris, the fetish of the head of Osiris. I have that image on the right, and you can see the resemblance. I think it's fascinating. And we see the one on the right at the temple in Abydos, and this represents the resurrected Osiris. And if you look at the bottom, I find it fascinating. You see two winged lions, and they're back to back with their wings around this erect pillar, representing the spine, the axis, in complete balance. And lions will also represent life force. So again, they're having this moment of silence. This is written, and I think it's just beautiful. I can't read the top because of the way this is set up. Can you read that top green line, Julien?
It says the Sahasrara or Crown Chakra opens and the soul can merge with the super soul.
Beautiful, thank you. Yes, and prana flows upward, thereby opening one chakra after another chakra. And when and again, this is covered up. It's just the way Zoom is presenting itself to me. But the other chakra opens up and you come to know the whole, but God and its creation and how he functions through his Maya. The soul meets the supreme soul, or the Paramatma, when it leaves the body from the Brahmandra. It's the moksha where the soul's journey comes to an end. And again, it's all speaking to that moment of silence. And again, it's about the Kundalini rising through the body, that process of, you know, I love to tell people that everything we experience in Egypt, every glyph, every myth, every icon has at least 7 levels of meaning and interpretation. And right now, I believe we're at the root chakra. We're seeing things at face value in many ways, and we're all trying to get to higher levels of understanding. And that's literally opening these gates as we move up to these other higher realms or higher levels of perceiving everything that's around us. And that all occurs when we awaken the senses we forgot we had. And I also wanted to point out, this is so beautiful. At the bottom, this image in all its beauty and its moment of silence is actually sitting on lions, just like the Osiris pillar was sitting, had the lions at its base. But what's also interesting is you see the image that's sort of separated from the head, and it's the hair of Hathor. And I have that to the right in the pending, or left on the in a pending drawing. That hair is the Omega symbol that holds the primordial waters of creation of the next cycle. So every end again is always a rebirth, resurrection, moment of silence, and rebirth. This is the pattern. This is the key. And so again, as Julien and I were both saying, once you hit that moment of gnosis and you come back out again, you've changed your perception. You are able to breathe out a whole new pattern of existence. And that can occur with every breath, if we really are doing our work and seeking these things in a positive, harmonious, heart-centered way.
I find it interesting that there are lions, because now that we entered the age of Aquarius, the opposite constellation is Leo. So
that's right.
Very interesting.
That's right. If we're looking north, and those of us in the northern hemisphere are seeing Leo rise, or Aquarius rise on the horizon. But if you're looking south, if we had a magnetic flip, but anyone in the southern hemisphere is looking up to see Leo rise on the horizon. And this is key knowing. But again, we could talk about that for hours. This is a wonderful quote by Rory Duff. He does amazing work. He's living in the UK. And he says, in geobiology, we find that linear high pressure vibrations run in different directions around the Earth, making significant intersections in some places. These are power places, right? Many of these locations correspond to ancient sacred sites and modern places of prayer and meditation, like cathedrals. It is at these and ancient Egyptian temples and pyramids. It is at these locations it has been found that human consciousness can expand into much higher states of awareness, where the experiences, along with greater levels of inspiration, creativity, and intuition, all become very apparent. This all shows some kind of connection between the universal intelligence, human consciousness, and these ultra-low frequency vibrations. Sacred sites where symmetrical intersections are found seem to be places where our own consciousness can connect in a more effective way with the universal consciousness. And this is just a beautiful way of stating what those of us that study these sacred sites have come to know. That they're really built over these power places, these energies where there's underground running water running in two different directions, crossing each other and creating that portal. And so and I'm not saying people have to go to a sacred site. They're all over the world. Many of our big churches are built over these areas because they're harnessing this amazing energy, but you can find these anywhere. So in a way, I am saying, if you can, seek out a site, but you can do this in the quiet of your own home. But my work, can also speaks about how we can experience this and raise our levels of consciousness by actually, if we have the ability, going to sacred sites and interacting with these sites. Every sacred site is tuned to a different frequency that can awaken the senses we forgot we have. And this is so important. And the way that the ancients had the ability to master craftsmanship by harnessing these subtle energies to create forms. If you look to the right, there's an image of a statue of Sekhmet. And she's this amazing lioness with a human body, and she speaks to what Julien and I were just talking about, that portal, the Aquarius Leo portal. She has the face of the lion and the body of the human that is Aquarius. And there are images in different places in the world that also speak to the same knowing that this is a game-changing moment on Earth. course it is. We all signed up to be here now. But if you look at that statue, her eyes are alive, you know, and the photograph doesn't do it justice. But when you're standing before her and you have those moments with her, and you know, she speaks to you, that's incredible. And not, you know, I'm not saying I think the stone statue, you know, is alive, but in a way it is, because the artistry and capability of these highly aware ancient cultures were able to create in such a way that they embody archetypal energies. That's incredible. And they left these things for us to experience, which is just, again, it's a phenomenal experience. And the other picture is, you know, we're in a Holy of Holies, and, you know, the Holy of Holies, any temple, when you're entering a temple, you realize, especially in ancient Egypt, that the ceiling is the heavens. You'll see stars and story of the myths and the star myths and the, you know, the movement in the heavens. The floors are the earth, and everything that's in between is the atmosphere. That's where everything's happening, right? That's where the life force is occurring. And as you walk into the temple, people sometimes are unaware that the ceilings are coming lower and the floors are rising as you keep walking until you get to the Holy of Holies, where heaven meets earth. And they're actually utilizing, again, those subtle geometries and energies to create this interactive experience, that when you get to that place, that's when you can have some of these moments of silence, or these moments where you interact with the netters, the neteru, the gods, but they're forces of nature. It's really, it can be life-changing.
Yes, I mean, Egypt is all about the energies, and the Egyptian were like master of these hidden or unseen energies and vibrations. So I was there last year with Patricia, and all the sacred sites have a special vibration. And if you're like a heart-centered person, I highly recommend to go there. If you want to sign up with Patricia, she's a great tour guide, and then you will really be able to feel this vibration. If you're not yet heart-centered, you can still go there. You might not feel it right away or less, but it will still help you and affect you to find your heart and to find your center again.
Thank you for that, Julian. And you're absolutely right. And you don't have to be aware. You're going to experience, you know, I always marvel, you know, it doesn't matter how aware you are when you come to Egypt. Egypt will change you. And I've had that experience with sites in Turkey and India and Peru. And I mean, just life-changing experiences. I'm a traveler, but you don't have to travel in person. I never want to say, oh, no, you have to go to a sacred. It's not about that. It is something that if you can, it can be an amazing experience. This is our group from last year, Julian, in the Osirian, and that's Jocelyn Starfeather, who was my co-host, and she's leading a meditation. And it's such a powerful, powerful place. And you know, when we create these moments, we actually paid for a private to be in this temple that, you know, is it could be tens of thousands of years old. You know, we really don't know. This is a structure that had no writings on it until later. That the writings, the few that are there, are more modern. But you can look at the megalithic structure itself, and we're only looking at the top level. This is already lower, I think, I forget exactly how much lower than it is. It's right behind the Seti I temple at Abydos, and it's much lower. And then it goes down. They've done a lot of they've used different technologies to see what's underneath, and the structure itself goes way down, and they obviously haven't been able to excavate all of it, but this is a very powerful place, and it's called the Osirian because it was considered, you know, the myth is that the head of Osiris, what we were looking at in that image, you know, the fetish of Osiris, that's supposedly buried under this structure. But this structure is known also as the place of resurrection. And many during very ancient times, rituals were practiced here. I'll stop there. And on the other side, on the left, you see, you know, the different gates as you go through the temple and get to the Holy of Holies at the Temple of Isis in Philae. And again, a powerful, powerful experience. And Saqqara, another one of my favorites. Saqqara is a huge, huge site, but I wanted to talk about their use of sound and frequency for healing. Because this was a place that literally harnessed the forces of nature to create an area where, you know, people could come in with different sicknesses, diseases, and be healed through frequency. And this is something that's being explored again today in modern times, the use of tone. But this is a wonderful site, and you know, I'm not going to go, we don't have the time to go through all the details of what happens here, but it's literally using underground running water and niches. You actually, I call it the Imhotep, or the healer would actually walk through a little labyrinth to get back to that niche that you see in the center. And he would put his or her head into the niche, and they could actually see the physical body that would be on the patient's table, which you can see in the lower left and the higher left and the lower right hand side. The patient's table, he could see the body and see where the energetic, you know, the energy and motion of that body was out of balance, and utilizing frequency to, you know, whatever was blocking that energy, they used the frequency, the color, the sound to unblock that energy so that it could flow again. So again, we're talking about harmonic resonance and tone. You know, and they understood that healing, especially spontaneous healing, is only one part of the step. It's an interactive process. And there's another place at the same site where you can actually experience your masculine and feminine within, as well as that place of balance. And it helps you get to the keys where you are out of balance, because you have to restore, whatever's out of place. If you can't, in other words, if you're not fixing what's causing the dis-ease, then you're not, you know, that healing isn't going to hold for long. And I've actually experienced that with people. I've been here, as Julien said, more than 14 years, worked with a lot of people at this site. And, you know, I had one person have amazing spontaneous healing. It was actually within the Great Pyramid. We did harmonic toning, and she had a pain so bad in her foot she couldn't walk. She was taking heavy painkillers, and it was gone afterwards. It lasted a year. She didn't change anything. She didn't look within, and unfortunately, it came back. And this happens over and over again. But as I'm saying, they understood this was part of the process, that, you know, we can find the tools to heal, and they're here today, and there's so many beautiful, you know, modalities out there. I know that Julien is a healer, and I know so many that you're using different methods, and it's spectacular. But there's always that second part where we need to go within and restore our inner balance. And, you know, that's also something that you know, they addressed here at the sites. And as I said, you know, this is actually also considered the Hepset court, where the king would go through all those rituals to, you know, unite Upper and Lower Egypt. And that's that same understanding of bringing the two hemispheres of the brain back into balance, perfect health. Again, it's all about balance. As energetic beings, our physicality responds to changes in magnetic, sound, and light frequencies that can bring the soul into harmonic resonance, purify the mind, and heal the body. You know, that's what it's all about. And people would tell me today, how? I don't know how to meditate. I don't know what can I do? And I have a picture here. I was just recently back in the States, and a wonderful friend and I visited the home I grew up in, which is way out in the country, way out in the boondocks, as we say, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And the new owners of the home, I said, could I take a walk down by the lake out in the woods? And one of the owners, they were just happy to have me tell all the stories about the house and what it was like. And they took me for a walk around the lake, and you could just see the beauty of nature. And I still dream about it, when I sleep at night, just this recent experience, because it's so magical to be out in nature. It really does restore our health. And there's been many studies about this, but if we could just get rid of our technologies, leave your cell phone at home or in the car, or turn it off, and get out into nature and experience the patterns of nature. It does something to bring us back to our hearts and back to our centers. And it's a wonderful place to start, especially if you're having trouble meditating, to find a silent place in the woods and just let yourself experience, everything around you. I found that the trees would talk to me. I had relationships with the animals and the fish. I was a funny child. I used to love to go out in the woods. I'd spend hours just, there were little creeks in the woods, and I'd, remove the sticks and the stones to let the creeks flow beautifully again. And I'd come back joyful. I think it made all the difference in the world for me. And it's the thing I seek when I'm feeling, I need a rejuvenation. I always think, oh, where can I go where it's green? So I'll end this with, Hakeem used to tell us, and he loved to tell us, to keep saying yakini, yakini. And it means, may you be protected by the power of your positive essence. And this is the key to walking through life. Not to be afraid to express ourselves, to be able to open our hearts, be who we are, speak our truth. Yakini, yakini. I believe in the power of my positive. I feel it. I know it to be true. It allows me to walk in my truth. And I love this quote by Osho: come out of the masses, stand alone like a lion, and live your life according to your own light. This is the way. This is the way back. That's when we shine. That's when we feel vibrant. It doesn't matter how anybody responds, as long as we are being who we are. It's just such a safe and wonderful place to be, to live authentically.
Thank you. This is a great ending of the very nice and great presentation. It was wonderful to hear it, and this ending really puts it to the point that hopefully more and more people walk that hero's journey's path and find their true soul and their true light to shine. So for me, Egypt was really a very transformative journey. Egypt did change me. So I would also invite you to claim your free gift. And if you want to go to Egypt, I think there's no better guide than Patricia to go with. It's really well organized, and she has so much knowledge about all the sites. And you're going to have a great time with some private tours in some of the great sites there. And the journey is going from January 21st to February 5th, 2024. So just claim your gift and mention that you got it from into the Unseen Realms event, and you will get a $50 discount for the upcoming tour with Jocelyn and Patricia. And the name of the tour is Egypt, Awakening Our Infinite Potentials. So thank you, Patricia, for all that you've shared and the wonderful journey into the unseen realms of Egypt that you've taken us, and for your wonderful light and energy. And thank you for all that you do. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to see you again and to share today.
was a great pleasure to have you in that event. Thank you so
Thank-
much, and to see you again.